All right, this is the August 2021 regular Conservation Commission meeting for the town of Groton. My name is Bruce Lofgren from the Office of Planning and Development Services. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, in person at the Town Hall Annex and via Zoom. If there are any attendees in the office that would like to speak, you can do so by raising your virtual hand during the public communications portion of the agenda. The only attendee I saw was Michelle, and I just promoted her. So with that, Larry, you can go ahead and take the roll and start the meeting.
See myself.
All right, we'll begin the roll and hopefully we'll get at least one more showing up. Larry Dunn, chair. Kristen?
Kristen Estante, member.
Tom?
Tom Olson, member.
Ray?
Ray Rafferty, vice chair.
There we go.
Michelle?
Michelle Fitzpatrick, secretary, and I just got to the point where I could do something. There we go.
There we go. All right.
Hello.
Very good. So it's such a disappointment we couldn't get to meet in person. We got within, about 7 hours, Bruce. We're all set to go, and then I get a call this morning.
We were close. One day too late, sorry.
Oh, so perhaps next month. Karen has joined. Karen, would you introduce yourself?
Karen Scapino, member.
All right, so we have no guests, correct?
I do not see any attendees, no.
All right, now actually we do have a lot of stuff to talk about. The first item is the approval of minutes from July 12th. That is in the agenda handout. If anyone would like to do a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Second. Tom
5
Olson.
seconds. All right, discussion.
Okay, well, my name is again misspelled, except for words of vote or attendance. It's misspelled every time it's referred to in the text.
Self-correction. I see, because I looked at it the first time was okay. Kristen, it's in the motion. All right, well, I guess. Oh, yes, yes. Oh. All right, so noted.
That ill, but no.
Any other questions or alterations? All right, Bray, would you amend your motion to include the changes to correct the spelling of her name correctly?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor of the motion, raise your hands. I see everyone. There's your hands. All right, that was passed unanimous with the spelling corrections. I'm assuming it's spell check did that to you, Bruce.
Yeah, it was consistent at least.
Yeah, at least, yeah. Public communications. Now, Bray?
I have a quick one on that one. This was referring back in our minutes that we just approved about the letter about Bluff Point and the problem with a lot of trash, so forth. This was a letter from Winterholer, and I didn't know where else to make a comment. This is just a sort of a footnote to that letter. And what I'd like to say is that I took a walk out there on Saturday to see exactly what he was talking about. So the letter that we wrote in response back to him since our last meeting was a very nice letter, but it didn't really approach the point of the Bluff Point parking lot that he was concentrating on, the writer of the letter to us. And in walking through Bluff Point, I was amazed at the number of people who were there, and I was amazed how clean the place was. I can see, because of the number of cars that were parked there, which there were very few open spots. That with everybody, with the heavy use that that place is getting, Bluff Point has always had a low priority with the state DEP to oversee it. In my dealings with Bluff Point in the past. And with the large numbers of people who use it, I think the state is trying to do the best it can with limited resources to keep it clean. That's not to say his letter isn't important, but I think he needs to write his letter to the supervisor of Bluff Point that works under the DEP Parks Department, and to have a perhaps a sit-down meeting with someone about what might be done to correct the problem of the wastes that are there. I know in the past, in my past with Bluff Point, when they've had a difficulty with keeping up with a lot of trash associated around the parking lot where the picnic tables are, they simply remove the picnic tables. And then they close the bathrooms. That did temporarily take care of an immediate problem, but it wasn't a long-term solution. And they gradually put the picnic tables back out. Now I was amazed at how much area has actually been devoted. It's increased the areas devoted to picnic tables, charcoal grills and so forth. And very impressed in the way the state has been opening up the area to, obviously, to the volume of people that are there. So I just wanted to say that as much this is as a concern, this is something that I think as we encourage more people to use open space, one of the sidebars to that is going to be an increased level of potential pollution. And what's the best way to deal with it? And so I just wanted to put that on the table.
All right, well, this is the correct timing of it. I had it kind of teed up. I think he did say that, and I showed the original one while you were talking, that he went in, and this was the response. So I, like you, have been there recently. And, you know, I picked up some things, especially on the beach way down. There was a couple of bottles or something, but it actually wasn't that bad. I mean, actually it was pretty good. So there's a lot of areas I thought are worse. So I thought the letter was appropriate. The only thing, given what you said, was to perhaps provide that direction to the deep, or to the state. I had the opportunity last week when a tree broke and was kind of teeter-tottering on the path over in Haley. I mean, literally, this pretty big tree was hanging right over the trail. I'm kind of going, holy crap. So I wrote a letter, a note to Deep. I got a response in an hour and a half that says, you know, gee, I'm going to forward this to the local person responsible. You know, they'll look at it, although nothing happened. And then a week later, it kind of broke and kind of sunk farther down. Actually, it made me feel a little better, because now at least it's on a teeter-totter, so it's not going to come crashing down. I didn't believe, and they apologized that they said we're looking into it. So, you know, you do get a response. It's not immediate, and the only suggestion I would make to the good letter that Karen provided was to perhaps add, you know, here's the contact point for Deep. So, you know, I held it up. That was the only comment we got back. So I would suggest, you know, with unanimous consent, that, you know, I make the adjustment to provide that reference on contacting Deep for any issues, you know, for their property. Tom?
Just for full disclosure, I've been in contact and actually had meetings with Mr. Michael Dwyer, who's the Park and Recreation Supervisor for Deep at Fort Trumbull. which is the controlling position for Bluff Point. And so I have his contact information. If you want that, I can forward that along to you.
Yeah, I think I've talked to him as well, like a year or so ago. So
Yeah. I met
yeah,
with him last back on the 16th of May.
all right. Yeah, no. So,
Along
yeah,
with the supervisor, Kim, I forget her last name, but so they're interested in stuff, but they have talking to the, that same day we were talking to both of the maintenance guys there, and they are more focused on trails and just a general, policing, but they don't get too heavily involved in the day-to-day trash pickup. And so I think one of the things that we may also want to talk about or focus in on is what is the role of the Friends of the Connecticut State Parks. There's a separate nonprofit organization down in Madison that focuses in supporting the Connecticut State Parks, because they recognize that there's insufficient overall funding for the parks right now for things like cleanup and that type of stuff. And that this Friends organization, and I don't know what their interface is here in the Groton area, though. I think that may be one thing that we want to take a look at in the future, or at least point to as far as future reference relative to what can else be done as far as from a volunteer perspective.
all right. So I can add that the Friends of Connecticut State Parks, as well as get more personal with Mark Dwyer in terms of local deep rep to the letter. So with that adjustment, I'm just looking for head nods to go forward on that. All right, good. All right, and thank you, Karen, for that letter.
That was
So that
Kristen.
That
was
was,
that, Kristen? Why am I? Oh, that Karen was the last letter.
yes, not this one.
Yeah, the last nice one. All right, you gotta, take pity on the old guys and their memories. So that was, let's see. Let me bring up my agenda again.
I
So
think this guy,
Winterholm-
remember, we thought he had scattershot this letter out. He may have already sent it to Deep, but we can double,
I thought when I saw the original one that there was a copy to Deep in there, which is why I wasn't too worried about the thing, but it doesn't hurt to redo it. So that was the response. So that was, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the one here from, the other one was a letter from Eugenia. Let me switch and bring that up. Okay, so was this in the package, Bruce?
No,
I didn't see it.
No,
no.
I didn't
Okay.
see it.
This came up because the last the town council meeting, and I did attend the last council meeting. I actually went to the senior center. I was the only one in the audience by the time we got to the end, but but it was interesting. They did a hybrid one as well. But there was a couple of topics. One was the sale of the Pleasant Valley Elementary School property, which we did take a position on that said, didn't object to it. It had a low value. I think it was like $500 an acre or something on average, because there was a lot of space that was asphalted over, that kind of stuff. So we hadn't objected to that. The letter from Eugenia didn't object to the sale per se, but said, what can we do to protect the portion of the property on the trees? So my view would be is that we've kind of said that in general about protecting the trees, but I think this is not a hill I would want to die on, if you will. So my view would be she got her view in. We happen to agree with it. We've already stated that to protect the trees when possible. So I thought this didn't require a response. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it while I was blathering. Tom?
Well, first off, I see that it's dated tomorrow and it's really addressed to the mayor and town council. And so if we received it, it'd be for information only. I feel that we should take no further action with it.
That we were carbon copied on it, sorry.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, that was kind of my view is that it was there and they were moving forward on it, and I didn't see any way that we were going to stop it anyway. There was a more interesting one. That one of the reasons I was there was for another piece of property that was voted on to accept as open space, and we'll get to that in a second as we get down. So we'll wait on the Warren Burroughs was thinking of actually joining us tonight. He's in town. Later on, we get the reported chairs. I'll talk about a meeting that we had, Bruce and I and John and he and Deb had at the town hall, I guess before they shut down meetings. But I'll give you an update on that in a bit. Oh, see, I had the right thing there. I should read my own writing, and it's spelled wrong. That had to be. That was not me. So that was spell check. That's what's going on here, Kristen.
Okay,
So,
well, let's unspell check it.
I
Or replace it all or something.
I just noticed that it's in there, and I know I didn't write it in there incorrectly. So it's Microsoft. Darn Microsoft. All right, let me go down to
For the record, it does that on my own phone, which is really annoying.
which is really annoying. Yeah,
And
I think there's a way.
insulting.
I think there's a way of changing that in the lookup function, but
Yeah.
let's not take the time here to do that.
Nope.
All right, so the next item is the open space plan parcel status. There's an index, and let's see if that comes up. Come on, there it goes. That'd be really neat if it switched automatically, but I have to switch the share screen to go to the new file. So let me go do that. Now this. I think I probably have to make this bigger. Hold on, give me a second here. All right, is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I think Tom started this. So I did a little update, so Tom will keep me honest on it. If you go through here, in terms of initial approvals, we did most of these in the last meeting. We did a bunch. We had here Wolfbrook was on July 21st, and it was combined with the No-Ank Ledyard Road, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. That was also for this one, and Maple Glen, right here. You'll notice that it says the draft on August 21st, and we'll talk about that. That's the new property of 20.5 acres. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. So I believe we're in pretty good shape in terms of these. I know that there was a under 5 acre and another one which was the was it Mystic Shore? I'm trying to remember what the name was. I guess it was this one. Hold on.
The ones that were.
Mystic River Coastal. So that one's also, so if you look at that one, I think, oh no, we did do that one, didn't we?
No,
so
you got it for August.
Yep, it's there in August. Okay, so I think that should have been, this says August 21st. So this was August, Maple Glen. So we've got a couple to review today. And I think we just wanted to close out on Wolfbrook. I just have some comments on that. So Tom, do I have this correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, the status is all correct. I did not, I wasn't prepared to talk to any of these tonight, but I noticed that as far as, because I didn't get any indication of which ones you wanted to handle for this month, because I didn't know that I didn't know if Maple Glen was too premature, because technically the town hasn't accepted it because the town council hasn't acted on it, only the committee as a whole. And secondly is the Mystic River Coastal was a proposal of joining some things together, and I hadn't gotten any feedback from you in regard if you wanted to do multiple things. And in parallel with that, the preponderance of that property is held by the Public Works folks. The pump station along the river. And I had not heard back from Michelle Maitland, who's my point of contact there, as far as on whether Public Works. I don't want to get stuck like I did before, where I kind of went out ahead with the Gary Court one and have to then retract it. That's kind of withholding. That's kind of wasn't pushing because I hadn't heard back from her in regard to what the Public Works position is. And so I'm not ready to talk to that one either. But if we want to, as far as from being a draft. I had sent those out to both Bray and Karen, but had not heard back on anything. I don't know if they wanted to express any comments at this time.
I don't have any comments. I read them 2 days ago, but I really need to go back. They looked good, Tom, but I really need to go back and reread them.
All right. I mean, that's fine. I mean, we could spend just a few minutes. Tom gave a quick update. I may kind of zip through these. Let me just save that with those comments. And Maple, okay, so, whoops, where did it go?
Maple Glen is on line number 12. And you said waiting on full approval. It's really full town council approval.
Yep. No. Yeah. It's full, and then it's got to go to the thing as a whole, et cetera. But there it is. All right. So let me just share just to see, because it is a topic. Oh damn! I got to go share. Do a different share again. All right. Let's try this. Okay. So there is a draft running around, but for information, let me get to the, okay, so
through this, I'm more than glad. I'm fairly familiar with the materials.
Well, I just want to let people know where it was and what the status is, so we can set it up for review at the next meeting. That's fine. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's a nice piece of property here that's I guess right in the middle. This is being provided to the town, I guess, as part of the open space development contribution. So it's a good chunk of land, if you will. It's all treed. It does have, it's a decent one. It's 1,316 per acre net value, but it's I think it's certainly an asset, and it has some things going for it. So I would say that I don't see any issues with the town not accepting it. Like I said, it's been accepted by the committee, and I expect to get through the rest of the approval process shortly. So that's pending here, and in Tom's good fashion, he put together his normal full package. So Bruce, I guess formally we can put this in the agenda package for next to review and approve next month, assuming that by next month we get full approval through the legislative process within the town. All right.
Okay, I got that.
So that's that one. The other one was, that was Maple Glen. Groton Heights. we did talk about that. That was the Eugenia. I'm sorry, I guess there was a couple when there was Groton Heights and that one was a very low ranked, I think it's 10 out of 11 when I looked it up, in terms of sale. That was a very small parcel as well. So that's going forward. I don't see any issue there. The other aspect then on this was, let me do the Mystic River Coastal. Mystic River Coastal. Just for information, Tom. That's
Sure.
all.
If you have any questions, I can brief anything you want on it. I'm ready.
Let me put up. What happened to my share function? Oh, it's down there. Oh, because I closed the file.
Tom, have you sent any of those to me? I think the only one I received is that the Mystic Glen one.
I sent the Mystic River Coastal. I sent it to Larry and to the members of to Bray and Karen, who are my reviewers. It wasn't ready for prime time because I'm still waiting for Michelle because if Public Works says they don't want to do it, it's a major rewrite.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just making sure I didn't miss it.
Yeah. No. That's fine. It was just a topic of discussion to see where things are at, because this kind of closes out. Now, I mean, some things may come up. So the Mystic River Coastal.
Push this one as Bray recommended this one, and so I expanded on his recommendation from last month as far as internal to the subcommittee. And so I took a look at everything that was along the coast, and these are the only 3 properties that touch the Mystic River, Long Island Sound, or the Thames River, as far as from town-owned properties that aren't already covered as parks.
It includes these kind of pieces here.
Well, not really. Those pieces are not. Those actually belong to either the railroad or the state of Connecticut.
I thought that was highlighted when I looked up the search.
Yeah, the town property ends at the railroad.
Oh, it ends here?
It ends at the railroad. That's exactly right. And between the railroad and the state, they own the property along the river. But under the cove, a little bit to the north of where the blue marker is there, that area is still river estuary, and so it is in the flood zone. As far as from the river, from this.
Well, this is kind of in the flood zone too. I mean, it is kind of low line.
State of Connecticut property.
Yeah. All right.
That's all. The state owns a lot of little pieces along like Sixpenny Island and that type of stuff, along between the railroad, just like north of there, the railroad on the north side of that little inlet is owned by the railroad. Okay. So.
All right. Very high value, by the way, interestingly enough, because of the fact that it's an estuary. You get the marsh value, and you get the ecological benefit of it. So you're up in the 4,000 to 9,000 per acre level because of that. So you can't do anything with it. I mean, I guess from a development point of view. So it's a fairly straightforward, let's say it's an easy call in terms of where it is. But it does deserve, because of the value of it, does deserve to be protected. And also, as the water rises, these are the ones that are going to disappear. I mean, so that's the other aspect of this, is then what happens as this goes inland, right? But that is out there. So I would say, again, that we'll table this for next month for a formal review, Bruce. And I guess formally we'll wait for Tom and the subcommittee to release the formal documents versus let me call it the draft documents that I was just showing you. So let me close that down. The other thing that on parcels is the approval of the no-ink Ledyard parcel that we did review. And I did put out there that it says that the stewardship plan was to be done with GOSA and with the Public Works. So the two named reps, I put out a letter and asked for the name reps. So we got Mark Berry, said that he would personally be on the stewardship plan committee. And I distinguish between stewardship plan and the stewardship management, if you will, right? So we're only talking about getting the plan together. And that would be Mark Berry and then Dan O'Connell. Joan Smith did say, oh, we've got groups and volunteers, to help work on it. And I said that we're not ready for that yet. We're just trying to agree that here's the plan, here's what GOSA does, here's what what Parks and Recs does, et cetera. And so at least now we have that. So the subcommittee, I guess, is formed. We had the 3 members that were named at our last meeting. And I guess it's down here. This is the letter. So it was Bray, Tom, and Ann. And now we have Mark Berry and Dan O'Connor. So we have that. That is the commission, or let's call it the 3 major brokers of it. I would ask who from Bray, Tom, and Ann, who would take the lead on that? Bray, would that be you as vice, or was Tom raising his hand because it's subcommittee lead?
I have a question.
Yep.
Are we getting too far out in advance? I don't know. And maybe Bruce can provide some input as far as on when is the town going to take ownership of this parcel, and what's the timeline? The original state timeline, I believe, was 15 months from the letter award back in March, which would put it in July of 22. And I was just wondering if everything's on track for that. And we could be talking about this, but I just don't know what the timeline is in regard to, is this a critical thing that we need to be worrying about at this point?
Right now.
From my understanding, that 15th month deadline from the state is very flexible. I think they want to show that. I think they just want to see that a town has initiated the requirements to purchase that property, and that after that they can be really flexible with that timeline. The last I heard, it seemed to be moving pretty quickly along. I can't give you a timeline of when we're going to acquire it, but from everything I've heard, it doesn't seem like it's going to be another year. It seems like we'll have it much sooner than that.
Well, I think the thing is to have a plan in place pending, if you will. It goes to show our interest and support, and would actually help the process and accelerate the process, and or help in additional funding, because there's other grants, et cetera, that are running around out there. So that was the thought process. So, not talking about execution, just talking about saying, yep, we've kind of looked at it. We know how we want to do it, and here it is. And then we put it on the table, waiting for formal, ownership or transfer. So that was the thought in that one.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That would be good to have if they ever asked, what is the town doing so far? At least you can say, well, we're already moving ahead with the management plan for this property. So, that shows progress and certainly interest.
So let me go back to the question, because I'm trying to turn this over in terms of how fast do I move on it to, well, Ann's not here, so to either Bray or Tom, to kind of take the lead on coordinating this to whatever pace is appropriate. So,
I have no problem. I work very closely with Joe Smith and Mark Berry already. I have no problem pushing this along. That's kind of asked the question as far as from where we are time-wise and what the expectation is before I volunteered here. But I'll gladly continue taking ownership of and pushing this along.
Well, I think that, by the end of summer, if there's been, a meeting of the minds that says, yeah, this looks good. Joan already came back and said, gee, it looks good, but, I'm not sure how much they actually looked at it. So it's not on a fast track, certainly. But I think it can't hurt to have it sitting there, or not sitting there, to have the the action in place. And it just helped the cause to make this thing not be 15 months, but maybe make it 8 months, which is certainly possible and feasible. All right, so we will log, put an asterisk by Tom's name. I'm moving this along, and with a generic target of end of summer. I should write this stuff down.
And I have a date of the October commission meeting
Okay.
this summer.
Well, that's a long. It's still nice. It's still nice till hell. It's nice till
Typically
December.
ends on September 21st or whatever. So
October meeting for update on the no ink. Not no ink. What the hell is that in my head? For the well, it's with the Wolf Brook.
it's No Ink Ledger Road is the way it's written right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a little politically correct because the town council indicated they are looking for a naming opportunity in discussions with the Meshtucket Pequots.
Yep. Okie dokie. So let me. That was that. All right. The next item was. So as we go through. All right, so this is what Michelle put
Right.
together. And it's almost like we went from the strategy to the plan, which is then the stewardship plans. And the next major phase is trying to organize and put together a project plan for the execution of all these stewardship items. And then it's the actual execution themselves, right? I mean, so we're kind of going down that path, which is a good thing. It shows action. And this consolidated plan, and as things kind of roll in, so thank you, Michelle, for that we would add to that. But as we get into prioritization and management of these things, I guess that's, I hate to say real work because we've been doing the real work. But now it gets down to brass tacks of actually, you know, cutting down trees and making trails and all that kind of stuff, right? So this is the next step in that. So let me throw it open for discussion. You folks had a chance to look at this, or Michelle, you want to go first?
But yeah, this is Michelle. I just wanted to just point out what I did because I really didn't do much. What I do is I took all of those action sections, and you could see I added in the property so we can keep track of which property it is. But I didn't sort them. I just tossed it all together so it was in one page. So I think obviously, you know, everything's 2022 or 2020, so that's not going to happen. But my, you know, the idea is to think about and talk about how we want to organize this and prioritize it. You know, do we want to sort it so that all the, you know, cleanup and boundaries is in one place, make that sort of, you know, focus of, okay, what do we want to do to, what kind of things can we just get volunteers to help us with? You know, what's the low hanging fruit for taking volunteers out there and taking care of it versus things that require their toggle? How do we want to sort this, I guess, is the question. Because I could go ahead and play with sorting it if we decide on some kind of priority for how to sort it.
All right, Tom, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did. One of the key items from behind all this is that if I go back to the open space conservation plan, was the development of a robust volunteer activity, you know, support structure. And what I don't see us doing here is really putting that in place before we start trying to check off things here. And I really think that, you know, we had talked in general terms over the last year or so about, you know, improving the website, getting videos out there, and to get educational opportunity, and then developing some type of volunteer effort that is somewhat structured and tied to groups or individual properties. And so that's the thing, I think, that before we worry about trying to execute any, because this property's all been sitting there for years, so it's, but getting the volunteer database, efforts started, and then having them have things that they can go do and putting it in their shoes rather than our shoes.
Exactly.
I look at this, it's not the Conservation Commission that should be worrying about putting groups of people to go off and clean things. It should be that we should be the instigators of getting a volunteer effort coordinated, and that hopefully you find a volunteer leader at each of these different areas that then they can develop what they want to go do relative to cleanups, surveys, working signage, and that type of stuff, and let the individual ownerships of those, and that as we as a commission would, if for the areas that don't become that have quick volunteer efforts because there's more probably local interest, in some of these more orphan things that we'd have to go off and then take some interest in trying to find somebody that would take stewardship of those. I look at our job here as a commission to be more instigators and arm twisters to develop this
Structure.
volunteer staff out there that will be coordinating this effort.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's disagreeing with there, Tom.
No.
But, Michelle, you got a comment?
Yeah, so I agree, Tom, but my idea with this list though was to sort out the things that here's the stuff that we want that volunteer base to work on versus the stuff that they wouldn't be. So one possible way to parse this is to work on this in both ways. So we need to have the list of stuff we want volunteers to do, right? So this is to take this stuff to parse. Here's what we want the volunteers to do. At the same time, go who are the volunteers, and then we'll have both pieces and somehow put them together. But we still need a list of stuff for them to do once we identify them. Tom's not agreeing. Okay.
No, I'm not disagreeing or agreeing. I mean, the data is there. It's on each individual plan. It depends on how you're going to structure the volunteer effort.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are we going to have just one big volunteer group? GOSA has one big volunteer group, but that volunteer group literally rotates around to their various properties on a week-to-week basis. Is that how we want to get ourselves structured, or are we going to want to have a dedicated people for Birch Plain Creek, then another person for Drosdeck Drive, another person for Industrial Drive, another person for Fort Hill Brook? Is that how we want to do it? And that's where I just don't know how we want to approach this.
Well, I hear you, Tom. Okay, take a breath. I think that's what this discussion is about, is which way to approach it. I mean, I got my own thoughts on it, but I'd like to hear other folks' view on what's a prioritization and approach. So any thoughts on that, Bray?
This is Bray. One comment, I support what Tom is pointing out, and Michelle. What you have done, or what the Conservation Commission has done in the past year, is wonderful to identify open space properties the town already owns, but it's not really on anybody's radar. It's not one of the more elevated public walking places. It's not Haley Farm. It's not Pequot Woods or Cobb property, but it's sort of an open space, and lots of them here in different backyards. Are identifying these things and putting them into, having Michelle put this into some sort of a spreadsheet to show what we have, is leaps and bounds from where we came from. And then coming along with Tom's good work about saying, this is what we see the property as of today, and here's some thoughts about invasive species, property lines, markings, and things like that. All good things that need to be done, but that is something to be done when volunteers become available, time in the future. But to me, I look at this as a reference point, as a starting point, that this is a good idea now, finally, of what the town has. And as we move forward on suggesting open space acquisitions to continue the green break systems to connect these things, we look at this list as a complement to that work. And here are places that can be linkages that perhaps we didn't know about. And now that we have all these master lists and we start picking this thing apart and organizing into something that makes sense to us, I think that's where we are going at the moment. But to actually say getting volunteers out on an individual property to do some of the work, that also is Public Works. We were talking about someone on their team being in charge of the, somebody's got to be in charge of those volunteers. There's a great deal of work in that department that still needs to be accomplished.
All right. I think, and I just did a quick sort as an example. I think it's both. In other words, things like formal signage, boundary surveys and those kind of things, has to be part of Parks and Recs or Public Works to do. I mean, it's functions of the town to do that. So if you sort through that, then I could certainly say, gee, we say, hey, you should go through it all at once and say, here's X properties, schedule it over the next year, go through and do the surveys, do all that kind of stuff and get that part done. Meanwhile, I think the other actions, if I just kind of clear this and look at the rest of these, there's a lot of volunteer things, and I think those should be done by local volunteers that are close to these areas. A lot of these are, let's call it, more community located types of areas. And I think that the model that was used for the Kalansky School, that's being used in a couple of others, that says there's local groups of people you can get invested in, enthused about something that's close to them, and they perform a volunteer pool that then works under the guidance or with Parks and Recs to get things done. But I think it's incumbent upon us, I think, that we should recommend maybe the prioritization as we go across these properties. We've got about 10 of them here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess there's 9. Is, those volunteer groups would be, we should probably prioritize as well which ones we should encourage to go forward first. So I don't know if there's a single answer. I think both approaches have merit. I mean, other comments on that? Okay, so having said that, we've got the list together. If we kind of follow along those lines, at some point, then we probably should share with Parks and Rec, et cetera, the fact that we have all these things and get their view on things that only they should be doing. Meanwhile, we should do a view of prioritization. So I don't know, Tom, do you think that's the existing subcommittee to make those recommendations? Should we form a new subcommittee, or should we do it as a commission as a whole? Let me ask you a recommendation there. You're on mute, Tom.
I'm hesitant to volunteer Bray and Karen, they can speak up for themselves. My specialty area is putting these plans together and stuff. I'm not all that great as far as getting the volunteer effort, churned up and out grabbing for people. So I don't know if it's to some degree from an execution perspective, I'd be looking for, some additional support or kind of posting this off at this time, as far as in regard to how to go do volunteer coordination. It's really not my bailiwick right now.
No, that's fair. I wasn't asking that. What I was asking is the next step is the prioritization. If we're assuming that there's two paths here. One is which of these actions are general that says let's go do surveys, for example, at once, and which ones would be location specific. And those locations specific would be by volunteers. And then what's the prioritization of property? That's it. The prioritization of properties, not the actual execution and the gathering of a volunteer group. There are people that know how to, that do that better than us. I would agree with that.
I guess in my mind, the it's chicken and egg type of thing. Having, you know, we can prioritize all we want, but if there's nobody there to go do anything, why bother?
I hear you, but you don't know where to start. So you say, we prioritize this, we can't find anybody, you go to the next one. So I mean, I hear you.
So are you looking for prioritization? You're looking for two sets of prioritization. One is of the individual properties as far as on what's more important or relative to other property, you know, stewardship plans. And then internal to the stewardship, individual stewardship plans, what should be done first or second, third, fourth? Is that what you're looking for?
No.
Just so I understand what your question is?
No, that wasn't the question. It was, which things should be generic across all properties? And like I said, surveying, boundary markers, things that are, to me, you got to do across to make sure that the land is protected. That's independent of each individual property, because I think the town owns it. They should make sure they know what the hell they own. The second part was just, we have 9 properties. I could say pick the highest net, net value property should be the ones you work on, or which ones provide the most community involvement and local support, or some combination of the two. And that was it, just a prioritization scheme for those 9 plans, right? Then we would have something to go forward to start to look for volunteer groups based upon at least that initial sort. Let me break and go to Michelle. She's patiently holding her hand.
Yeah, and I am actually leaning more towards where Tom was going before, and that is the priorities based on the volunteers. So I think we need to have a list of, here's properties, town-owned properties that we're looking for volunteers to help with. Put that out to our people that are offering volunteers, see who we get, see what they want to do. What we have volunteers for becomes the first priority. We see what we have volunteers for, and then we see what we don't have volunteers for and figure it out after that.
Okay.
But I think every one of these needs a cleanup, right? So we can make a list right away. I mean, just the list of properties is a list of properties we need volunteers for almost.
Yep. All right. Other comments on that? So specific recommendations that says, take the 9 properties. They're all there online, but we can put together a brief memo to all of the volunteer organizations we know of, and or, town council members and or town or the RTM perhaps, that says, hey, you guys are responsible in each of your sections. Is there something you want to, is there any volunteers out there that support this particular area, and see what happens? That's kind of what you're saying, Michelle?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And even maybe
Karen?
post something online saying, if you want to volunteer to help with, town property stewardship, let us know or whatever.
Okay. Karen?
I just have one question. I like Michelle's idea, but wouldn't you want to have or to be looking for a volunteer coordinator for some of those areas first, before you just have, like 100 volunteers? You need a structure,
Yeah.
We need a structure with those volunteers. Otherwise, those volunteers, nobody knows what the left hand or the right hand is doing. Am I wrong in thinking that?
The thought was to go to people who could serve that structure.
Right.
Not random people.
Oh, okay.
Kristen?
Just might be something that evolves, that we may give it a start and start in some small way and see how it develops. And we might not have enough foresight right now to really figure out exactly how it's going to play out, but it might just make sense to start in some manner and then grow from there.
All right. but okay, Tom, then Michelle, then Bray, so I can keep my hand checks in motion here.
I appreciate all the other comments here, and as far I'm getting a general feel here is that we go through the volunteers, and that's really going to drive what the prioritization is. First come, first served is that. But I also see, after looking at the activities here, is that as the team that we had, myself, Bray, and Karen, that we could put together some recommendations for consistency as far as on what the details of an activity are. For example, on the mark and verify boundaries, that type of stuff, we could come up with, here's what we recommend relative to what those actions should be to give more fidelity to it. And I think that, and also likewise in the cleanup areas, that there needs to be more fidelity as far as what our expectation are for these volunteer coordinators, and that we could work on that over the next August and September here, and have something ready for the October meeting. I think that answers your thing in regard to your what you're looking for relative to your approach.
All right, let's see. I can't remember what I said. Michelle,
Yes,
and then Bray.
right, yeah, so this is Michelle. So Karen, you may not know this. I was actually the president of Avalonia Land Conservancy for 3 years. So I have an idea of what to do once you know who the volunteers are. And Bray's a big part of Avalonia. Tom's been working with GOSA. So I volunteer to help oversee the volunteer process. So once we have volunteers, helping them figure out who wants to work on there, get the leaders, use what you guys come up with for their guidance. I'm willing to help oversee that whole process.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, super. Bray.
This is Bray here. A couple of thoughts on my part is at some point here, we have to pull in the town, like Parks and Rec, some point person who knows what we're doing, so that if all of a sudden one key person like Michelle drops out, the town knows either to pick it up or who to contact and so forth. And the other is, as we go forth, I'm not quite sure what we can do on the properties that were covered by insurance, for instance, what we can't do. I know that with Avalonia, boundary markings was a huge headache, and they called in professional people to do it. The town has professional people, but I'm not sure they have, for instance, Google GIS or GPS level of equipment to actually go out and quickly mark them. So there's lots of moving parts on this. And I think everybody's effort that has been mentioned is good. But at some point, as Tom said, we've got to have somebody who's a point person on all this that can keep a record of what's going on and where. So things aren't dropped or duplicated, so forth. I don't know that the Conservation Commission is that's part of our charge.
Well, I don't think anything will get done if we don't push it to it. A lot of things have happened
I'm not
already.
saying we don't push it, but certainly to keep volunteers going and keeping all that organized is a lot of work.
All right. I've been jotting notes here. I've got 4 actions that I've kind of extracted out of the conversations. So I think, so let me throw it out there and see if this makes sense from what I've heard. First, we do need to contact the town as to our process, our expectations, and to ensure that, they obviously they own it and it's their responsibility, and here's how the process we're talking about can help them. All right. Secondly, it's expansion of some of the key common items. I think Tom mentioned this, to provide some context and some details of expectations that the town and or the volunteers would actually execute. Third is the, let me put it, call to arms to not individual volunteers, but to the various environmental groups around the town that we've worked with that says, hey guys, we're looking at these areas, and I'm including, let's say, the RTM. I'm getting down, I'm skipping the town council, but right down to the RTM now that I think about it, that says, look, some of these properties are in your RTM districts, and maybe we can map the RTM member to the, now that I think about that, the RTM member to the property, to say that, hey, we actually are going to ask them to be on the hook to work with their community to see what they can do in terms of volunteer groups, the specific actions to be determined. And then the fourth action that Michelle talked about was, what would be the process to kind of coordinate and marshal those volunteers by working with, let's say, an RTM taking the lead and or Parks and Rec taking lead, or whatever that structure, right, which yet to be defined, is going to be. So that, to me, those four actions kind of moves things forward, and we're going to learn from it. And then we can kind of regather and decide, where is it the right direction, the wrong direction? What did we learn? What are people willing to do, not willing to do? So that's kind of my net of all this. Does that sound like a reasonable action or course of action? I see one head nod. I see two head nods, three head nods. Okay, my goodness. I guess that's why we have committee meetings or commission meetings to kind of work through this. So I guess the whole point here was, how do we move from planning to execution? And this starts us on a path. So that's good. So I will now, let me look back on these actions. I will take the action, I'm going to write down here. I will take the action to work with the town and alert them that this is coming, and here's our expectations, et cetera, and these other actions that are going to occur. Michelle volunteered for that action, but that's going to be at a future time. Tom volunteered the subcommittee to do some expansion on the details. Did I get that right, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. And the first one is putting together communications. And my suggestion is to the volunteer communities like GOSA and Avalonia, those guys, and RTM members, does the same thing, kind of shake the tree and see who, see who responds. Who would, I would like someone to work with me to put that communication together. Do I have a volunteer that would work with me on that one?
You're talking about just writing a letter or something?
Well, to me, well, that's partly what we would do, is we would sit here and discuss. I think it should be a letter. Maybe it's followed up with a phone call in a couple of weeks. I think one of it is to go to GPS and look, kind of map the RTM members to these specific properties and see who's there or might touch them. So it's not a lot, but it is going to take some work, and it's the follow up, and we could divide that up to those, because we're going to wind up with 1, 2, 3. There's 9, and you're probably going to get, let's say, 2 RTM members that might touch on each one of these. So we might be talking 20 contact points plus, the 6 or 7 groups that are out there. That's what I meant by dividing up amongst the 3 of us. I know Kristen and Karen raised their hands, so I'm gonna immediately say let's form a subcommittee just to get that done, and then to follow up to see, as we shake that tree, what comes out of it. So Karen, the K's, Karen, and Kristen with an I. I'm gonna write that down. I don't autocorrect here. All right, so I'm gonna do a subcommittee on that. And I will reach out to you and you could think about that. All right, so I don't want to take the time here to do that. All right, so no, I'm kind of happy we have a go forward plan, and then in a couple of months, we should kind of, as we get back together, we'll say, you know, are we beating our head against a wall, or we're making progress? And it'll self-correct. We might get 2 or 3 properties to focus on, and we'll worry about the rest later. Very good. Any other comments on that topic? Let me close that down. Let me close that down. Maple Glen, Groton Heights Action Plan, Stewardship Books. Mr. We did that. Oh man, this is zipping through here. Stewardship Plan there. Groton Family Farm. Okay. On this topic, Warren Burroughs reached out and said, I'm in town. Gee, you know, what should be done next? I suggested that he really talk again with the town planning function, because there's some stuff that, you know, they could support him on. So we had a meeting, when was that? Was that last Tuesday, Wednesday, Bruce? Something like that.
Yeah, last week. Yep.
So as I mentioned, Bruce, Dan, John Reiner, and myself and Dr. Burroughs met. It was a good meeting. He reiterated his interest to find some way to protect the land, protect the history, provide community access, and make a buck. I mean, you know, so that was kind of the struggle. So the net of after it was about an hour discussion, and the net of it was that the recommendation, and I believe it was John's recommendation, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, that said, look, the best way is to take, and we talked about the plans we recommended. I think it was Plan C, making a buck. Plan D didn't make any money. So things like Plan C and or something, and go and find a realtor and go after shaking the tree on developers to see who would be willing to invest, because somebody's got to be willing to invest in taking that parcel of land. There was also some discussion of, I think the adjacent property is also maybe looking at selling it. That's the farm just, I think it's north, you know, kind of behind the senior center. So you add those two together and you get a decent sized piece of property there.
Do we ever find out what the value of that property was? I think the question had been asked and we don't.
Yeah, there is an assessed value. I mean, the value is going to be what somebody's willing to pay for it, I guess.
I mean, any ballpark idea what that market value would be?
I looked it up, but I forget offhand. Bruce, do you remember offhand?
I don't, but I know the town, I recall John saying that the town did an appraisal of that property
Yes.
few years ago. Obviously the price has gone up since then, but I could see if I could provide that to you guys just to get a ballpark of what it was appraised at.
Mhm.
I suspect we're talking 6 figures. Maybe, I'm sorry, I was thinking 7 figures, yeah, add one more. So I think my own view was that it's going to be it's not the kind of thing that the town, in my view, it should invest in, because it's a development investment. It is not, it doesn't have high, and I was honest with Dr. Burroughs on it, that it doesn't have a high conservation value per se. I mean, it's just, you know, pasture land, et cetera. So there's not riparian areas, there's not creeks, there's not marshlands, there's not any flora or fauna. I mean, it's there in the middle of town. So it has interest from a community point of view, but not necessarily from a pure, what I would call conservation land point of view. So I kind of did that, even though we as the Conservation Commission support the community involvement. It's not because of high conservation value. It's really because of what it might be for the community and having open space. Is more of a public space rather than open space, if you get the distinction there, right?
That's true.
So that was kind of where it wound up. So he was, I heard, or at least I felt that he was going to accept John's recommendation and go do that. I think he expressed the desire, or not desire, the point of view that says he'd been working on this for like 3-4 years now, that time to kind of accelerate the pace and get a decision done, knowing that he can't necessarily get the perfect solution that they would like. That's more of a feedback to you guys. Any comments or observations that you want to throw out there? Ray?
I like the small size house sort of concept. It would be very interesting, since I can't recall something like that being built in Groton anywhere, whether or not a developer would come in and as suggested in the borough's plan, do it on that concept. But it's an interesting thought for having scaled down houses that don't have a high price. A variety of different folks can move into it. The other is that I don't think the town is really very good at taking historic properties and turning it around on parts of the property to, he's converting the barn into something that produces income and so forth. I don't know that we're really that good at it. But the other thing that's in the back of my mind is, over the years in Groton, there's always been this deficit on what we call a downtown, or a central part of town. And within that deficit, it always talked about, well, we have the town hall here. We've got Fort Hill, where the businesses are over there. And then there's Mystic. Mystic is driving lots of activity, lots of things going on there, but not so much in the rest of the town. And always one of the things that came up to say is, if we're going to have something around the town hall and then include Fitch Middle School, we've got the library already, we've got the senior center, they're all sort of grouped together. This one private property that's sort of in the middle, that it doesn't seem to be, I don't hear anybody on the town side coming forth and saying, well, maybe the town should have it to do something on a larger scale sometime in the future. And we have the property to do it.
Available.
To have some sort of other town structure to support, let's say, the center of town. I don't know quite what it is or how it'd be designed, but I'm just leaving that on the table, that it seems as though from your meeting, it's pretty much, Dr. Burrows, see what you can do on your own. And good luck.
Yep, I did push on that point, Bray, several times, as Bruce can attest to, and there was not an appetite to have a town involvement, if you
It's too
will.
bad.
So, guys, it is what it is. So I think that there was from a positive. Let me end on a positive note here. One of the positive things that was expressed was, it's different than it was last year and the year before, where the interest has gone way up, where, having these small cottage, type of buildings or homes is more in vogue. That, from a timing point of view, it probably couldn't be a better time, to find somebody willing to, to take on that investment and having that public space available. And we did talk to Dr. Burrows about different ways that he could protect that public space with covenants and easements, et cetera. I don't know. I came out a bit more hopeful. Bruce, do you want to make any comment from the town and the staff's point of view perspective?
No, I mean, I don't think I have too much to add. You pretty much covered it. I mean, I think we found it hard to market one private property and not others. And I think that's kind of where John Reiner was coming from the town point of view. It's hard for us to really market a private property and be fair because, you know, it's not the town who owns it. I mean, it's a private individual, and for us to use our resources and market it, it just didn't seem like a fair way to do business across the board. And I think that was kind of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but that was pretty much my understanding of it.
Yeah, that was certainly John's position. Yep. Yeah. I tried to find a way around it, but he didn't bite at all.
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty firm with that. Yes.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm looking online here as far as for the appraisal value. The two parcels total out to $210,000 is what he's paying taxes on. Because it's all listed as public farmland. And so he's getting a very good tax break already in the appraisal world. Just for information.
Yeah, he's getting a great tax break. Yeah, but that's not the value of the land. I mean, for 200 grand, hell, I'll buy that land for 200 grand tomorrow. I mean, you know, so, but that ain't gonna happen. So, all right, why don't we can't, you know, that's informational. So why don't we move on to the next topic? If everyone's okay with that. Now it's listed as MS4 funding. I don't know if that's more of a continuation from last month. I don't think there's any, is there any update on that? I think Tom had talked about that one.
I haven't talked about it, and all I know is MS4 funding is unless we're talking about what's being tied to the ECCD efforts at Baker's Cove. I don't know if that's what this was intended to talk to or not. Otherwise, I don't know why we would be, as far as it's a public works issue.
All right, well, we'll move right along. Yeah, all right. Mr. River Coastal Plan, we've talked about. There was, I guess maybe this was more of a public input, but I did get a note on Walmart and their plastic bag workaround. You know,
Thanks.
Yes. So they went to, I guess what it was, 5 mils, and so they went to a 6 mil bag and said, "Have a nice life." To get
I think
around
4. They went to 4. I think the regulation said 3. So to get around the regulation, they made all their checkout bags 4.
4. Yeah, which, oh gee, their view is, well, it doesn't blow around as much, but it's now more plastic. So and
Completely
people are not
violates
going to
the
wash
spirit.
them out. Yeah, it certainly doesn't meet the spirit of it.
Mm-mm.
But given the amount of energy and effort, et cetera, you know, again, I'm not sure whether we should just, I don't know, any comments on that in terms of what our action response would be, or just leave that up to the state because they're the ones that set the 3 mil spec to begin with.
Well, this is a
Not my
game
view.
Walmart's playing nationwide.
Yeah. Yeah, Karen?
Is there any chance that the state is going to have a response to it? And at that time, the Conservation Commission could agree with the state or support the
Well,
state?
that's kind of my thought, is that this need, I mean, the stricture or the limit is at the state level. So I think it should be up to the state, and then we could, like we did the first time, is support them on either raising it or, you know, making it even more restrictive on the plastic bag. So so I think on that one is a question of reaching out to our representatives that says, hey guys, are you going to do anything about this? Anyone want to volunteer to reach out to our state representative and put it on their plate? Kristen?
I'll do it. So you're talking about who, Heather?
Whoop,
Got
on
my
the Senate,
computer.
you okay?
Yes, I just dropped the computer. Heather, Joe,
Heather, Joe, and
Christine.
Christy, yeah, I think the three of them. And just say, hey, guys, are you taking any action on this? I think it's more of a, see if we can get a response from them. And then after that, then in a supporting role, I think exactly what Karen said, that our job would be in a supporting role.
Right.
Okay, so it's a reach out. And then based upon that, we can see what we should do on that one. So that's the plastic bag. How are we doing on time? Oh man, we're rolling right along.
And just
So that,
Larry, on the plastics, I just want to be sure. So you said just to see if there's anything we can do within our ordinance. I'm just looking at it right now because our plastic bag ordinance does differ from the state. I mean, we say minimum thickness of 4 mils. I mean, do you actually have anything on that to show what exactly they're doing? Because maybe it could be something
They're
that
doing
the
4.
town can look in. They're doing
They're
4?
doing exactly 4. It's because I think we said ours, the ordinance says less than, so they're doing exactly that.
Yeah, it says a
yeah,
minimum
but
thickness of 4. Okay.
so is that in Waterford or in Groton? I'm trying to remember exactly where the line is there. I think Walmart is in Waterford.
One's in
We have-
Groton.
Yeah, we have
One's in
one in
Is
we
this
have one
in
on
Groton?
184. Yeah.
All right, so if in fact, well, then maybe there's a second action. If in fact, if our ordinance is 4 mils or less and they're doing 4 mils, then I would ask the town staff to take action to enforce the ordinance. So I guess that's a question for Bruce.
It's something, yeah, I can look into. If you forward your correspondence to me, I can have our blight enforcement, code enforcement person, Tom, look into it and see if there's anything we can do.
All right, I will send that to you right at the meeting. CC Bruce and ask town ordinance. All
It
right,
should
I
be,
will
I mean,
do
it should
that.
be really bad PR. I think there are some Facebook campaigns and environmental groups like the Connecticut BYO group that are trying to give Walmart some bad press because this is complete greenwashing. They're putting this big, we're a green corporation, we're doing so much to help the environment, and then they pull something like this, which is polar opposite. So hopefully they'll get some social pressure.
Yep. All right, so that's action 1 and action 2 on that. All right, the next one is, oh, Bray?
Yeah, I have a question for Bruce. Has the town had any instances where straws or plastic straws or cups or anything like that we've been involved in? Talking to some of the
For violations?
for violations. I mean, how are we doing in that part of the ordinance?
Honestly, we're doing very well. There have been a few times where we've received some complaints, and we've noticed things ourselves from a town staff point of view, and we've issued the warnings, and there's been compliance shortly after. And really, there's only been a handful of them that we've found that a lot of companies, especially the bigger companies, were already anticipating this and kind of did it on their own timeline around the same time we proposed. I got an email from Taco Bell. They have a sustainability coordinator for the whole corporation of Yum Brands, Taco Bell, and they were asking about the ordinance, and they had already been doing it in the town for quite some time before we enacted it. So it's been received well, and there's been very little non-compliance, at least from what the town has noticed.
Thank you.
Could I say I've
Kristen?
been to at least 3 to 5 establishments where I've gone in, I've been served a plastic straw, I've observed everybody in the place getting a plastic straw. I've, very nicely spoken to management, and mostly they were like, oh my God, we had no idea. Thank you for telling us. And then I've done a follow-up email to send them like a summary of the copy of the ordinance and say, hey, look, I'm just giving you a heads up. I don't want you to get a fine, so I'm not going to report you, but But it's been really pretty positive as far as my interactions with these people.
Yeah, right, but it's the same observation I've had. I've seen no negative pushback despite all the fuss, Bruce.
Mhm.
This has gone very well. I think it's something that we're a seaside community, for God's sakes, you know, so people get it. So I think it's good. We got to start looking at handing out those stickers, Kristen.
I know, yeah, it's, and now it's the stupid, thing, yeah, but we're just gonna, does everybody have some stickers? I mean,
You can design them.
no, we have the
No,
stickers, they're all
We
designed.
have
and
them,
done.
we have them.
They're beautiful. It's just we haven't gotten around to kind of getting downtown and getting to different stores and handing them out. But it's,
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that because it's now, you know, with quote, COVID lightening up, and now it just come crashing down again. It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, we didn't do it for a long
So-
time because of COVID, and now, we're
Right.
just like, oh, good, we're gonna go walk around and hand out stickers, and now it's like, oh,
All right, so let's checkpoint that. I guess, and you know, it was more kind of a recognition of what people have done more than anything else, but
Yeah.
it's always a
Liz
good
and
thing.
Eugenia and I have it on our short list.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, the next item is the short-term action list. Let me bring that up. Okay. So this is getting shorter, which is a good thing. Green again is what was completed. So, and we have names on this, so I'm going to go through this really quick. We are actually going to talk about this. This is the Greenway Plan, so I think that's coming up next, Tom, on the agenda. So,
When you're ready, I'm ready to
Yep.
discuss.
so that's actually next on the agenda. So we'll get back to that. And this one was coastal program. Oh, okay. That one is the MS4 task force for participation, and that's later in the year, as I recall, correct? Yep. This one was checkpoint in July. Oh, the new bridge going over that. And I know you reported on that, Bray, but I thought we had saw pictures of that. I did see pictures of that. The bridge has been completed.
About a week ago, I don't believe the bridge was completed a week ago, so they must have worked on it this past week then.
I thought I saw a picture online on that. It certainly looked like it. Let me quick go find that.
I'm also there. When I went to the site a week ago, all the building material was in place, and it looked like is ready. It's all staged. The 26-foot three stringers across the bridge were all laid out and stuff. So it was in process of being complete. I had not checked this week to see if they finished it. But I didn't see anybody working on it either. So it's just the material was all available.
All right. Maybe I was mistaken. So I can't find about it, but I know that new bridge is under construction. I could have sworn it was done, but all right. This one's fourth quarter. Investigate public access to the open. Oh, this is the trails booklet and the panel book. So Bray was working on that.
Still a work in
Any update
progress.
on that? I'm
But
sorry.
right now, the website for trails in the town is down.
When did that happen? I thought it was just there.
Over the weekend, I was trying to get on to get some things, and wouldn't let me.
Oh. All right, I have a suggestion. I've been out futzing around, and let me share this with you. What am I trying to do here? Stop sharing, new share. No, I don't want to do desktop. That's wrong. Let me stop that. Stop share there. Let me do a new share. Sorry about that. Oh, this one here. So this All Trails app.
Yeah.
I went in there and, I did, and they have 17 trails for the town of Groton. And the way they have the Sheep Farm, Bluff Point, Candlewood, Cop, Merritt, Gray, Hiley, etc. But what was interesting is that, again, at the social media point of view, you can contribute and add information and or add trails. So if you go into like Sheep Farm, I know that's near and dear to, you get the, a map, which isn't quite accurate, I noticed, but it does show, one of the loops. They've kind of missed out the blue trail, but it struck me that says, with everything going on, this is more for Bray, said, and this is free. There's a pro version, but the pro version gives you things like emergency, if you're in trouble, they'll send they'll send your GPS coordinates to 911 and some other things. In terms of basic trail information, maps and comments and pictures, because on here you get, there's 373 photos of Sheep Farm. Now, of course, they're not exactly reviewed, but it struck me that says, rather than trying to invent their own stuff, what is you just using something like this? I mean, they already have 17 trails.
And add. Yeah.
Should we just kind of add on to this some of the properties we're talking about, and not get ourselves tied into a bunch of trying to create something new out of whole cloth? I'm throwing it out there, guys. Just a thought. Yeah, Tom.
Just a little bit of additional background with my experiences with the Tritone Trail. What we did, just for full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors for the trail, and we have one of our volunteers is very heavy into this tracking and GPSing all the trails and stuff, and he's been very successful in working with the make sure that the Tritone Trail gets properly documented. Because what we experienced, as far as because this is all essentially crowdsourced information. The people that use it put whatever they want on, and so if you can get the trail going in the wrong direction, if the last person that used it goes off on a different tangent or wants to go do something different, and so. It takes a little bit of somebody really being on top of it to try to get things corrected to the way it should be, the way that we want the public to utilize it, that type of stuff. It's a significant effort and frustration also that you run into that. I just put that out. All trails crowdsourcing usages.
Yeah, no, I understand that negative side of it. Other comments? Well, Bray, this is kind of in your bailiwick. So, any druthers on your part?
Just one of the questions is this set up that go walk the trail and then submit your pictures, and then you've got a place to say, these are my pictures? Or is it deciding that each area has X number of pictures and that's it. You know, is it an open source or not? So
Yeah, no, it's open source. That's a negative part that Tom mentioned. I went through some of the pictures and, there's 10 pictures of a guy and his dog, right, on the trail. So there is that, which is, kind of like, but I was thinking that just having the listing and in getting the right trails in there, might have some value. Like, again, it was just a thought that said, is it something that if we're going to invest in creating a booklet, if I took the same investment and did it here, the mechanism and platforms there, or not? I'm like I said, it was just for discussion purposes. Yep, Tom.
Again, I think this is something that's really run through the Trails Task Force. I know that the town has made a considered effort, particularly as a part of the Parks and Rec effort, to focus and have the town's putting money into maintaining these, and so they want to be able to present them the way that they, from their perspective, and with the Trails Task Force, they also recognize the tie-in Avalonia, the Tritone Trail, and GOSA also. I think that's really the focus, rather than going all trails as a crowdsourcing mechanism. I think that from the commission's side, we should continue to support what the task force direction is.
Right. So are you synced in with Embray on the Trails Task Force?
I've been to a lot of the meetings, but I haven't, they're only meeting now on the quarter, and I missed the last one. But I fully echo what Tom says, that the Parks and Rec has formed this task force to have a variety of inputs in the community into what would everyone think would work for trail system, for trail maps. Instead of going out to these other websites that are out there, latching onto them. I've been trying to think of working within what we already have. We're working with the town because they're the ones that are responsible for the trails, for maintaining them. Like a Pequot Woods, they're the ones that mark the trails. They're the ones that blaze the trails, as well as keep them open. And
all right. Well, I think the point of Trails Task Force is it's not just town-owned property, which I agree they have it, but it's also, Avalonia, GOSA, other properties that are part of the family, if you will.
right.
So I think that's the benefit of the Trails Task Force and what we're trying to find how to get to all of those places, because it's kind of a little bit scattered. All right, so what's the next checkpoint then on the Trails Task Force and the town in terms of at least the baseline trail update?
I'll try to get in touch with Mark Berry and then bat some ideas around and see where we are.
All right. I think, Tom?
I just want to share real quickly. I've got the picture up of where the crosstown trail behind the new school is. This is the picture of what the construction process as of last Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, I still, all right, I must be losing it because I thought I saw a completed bridge. But that was exactly what it looked like, those base things, and I thought it was a nice bridge, unless I looked at that picture and thought that was a bridge. I don't know.
All
right, I'll go double check it. All right, the next topic is Tom had an update for us on, well, I guess there's two things, the Connecticut Greenways, and then there was a little bit on legal language for unprotected parcels, which is another action item that we need to take a look at. So Tom, you want to spend time on Connecticut Greenways? I think it was in the attached in the agenda.
It's an agenda item, but not yeah, there is and I'll do a screen share here just for everyone's information. What I got here is on the action item, I did contact Mark Berry a couple weeks ago. And then we discussed in big picture what the status of the prior submission from 2019. If you remember back in February, March timeframe, Mark put a submission in to the Greenway Council, filled out the form, and there's forms in your work package in regard to the designation, the nomination form. That was not approved by the state, and it's essentially off the table. I did also contact the state and talk to the lady that runs the program. We have to do a resubmittal of what we want. And this was one of the comments that I thought was, she didn't say why it was disapproved, but and she has no record of why the disapproval was. It just wasn't accepted. But if you go back and take a look at what is in the acceptable areas, is that it's a point-to-point type of thing and not a whole system that we were trying to sell as our Greenbelt program, and that's what Mark put in. And so in talking to Mark, I said, why don't we try to focus in on 3 areas. One is the connection to New London. One is a connection to the Great Oak, which is up in Ledyard. And then we also recognize at the same time that you've got the Tritone Trail trying to do a very similar thing and linking through Groton and Ledyard up to Preston, and recognizing that if they want to go on to Greenway designation themselves, they may put that in consideration. And so what I did was I took the trails and our Greenbelt system and said, how could we put something together here to potentially take a look at what's the efforts that are being done right now with the Kalinowski School and areas of that, and get over connecting to New London. So I kind of just put a proposal here together on this a potential greenway in blue here that would link Washington Park, get over to the schools, then through the Kalinowski property, some of the the Joel properties, Sparkle Lake, and then get you all the way down to through the golf course and to Avery Point as a one. And then also taking a look, the gold here is the Tritone Trail going down. This is their proposed path, and they're in discussions with get this going, and as well as with the DEP. So this is pretty much on track right now. We'll let them go off and do that on their own. But then the other one would be taking a look at what the Groton Open Space is doing. That they've actually, if you start up here with their Avery property in Ledyard, and then taking a look at their Candlewood Ridge property, the state property for the wildlife management at Candlewood Hill, the Paulson property, then going, there's a little gap here that they have, which is P490 property that's could be purchased. And then they have their sheep farm south that they acquired, the Merritt, and then the town property here, and then getting into the state property. You have essentially what I call the Ghost Open Space Greenway potential here to take a look at another parallel north-south greenway that would not, that's pretty much all in place to a large extent, other than around the I-95 corridor passageway. This would be where the tunnels are already existing. So those are the 3 things that I was looking with Mark, and he's gonna take a look at this. It'll probably come up on the Trails Task Force, and then with the goal of potentially putting a package together for submission in the March timeframe of 22. So I'm putting this out there for if people like to look at it, provide any comments back to me so I can get those coordinated with Mark in regard to kind of a joint submission between what the Conservation Commission's recommendations are in parallel with our Greenbelt system and what Mark is doing relative to supporting efforts to see there's potential when getting a greenway, then there's potential for funding opportunities, additional grants and things, and taking a look at what he would be looking at to try to for improvements from a Parks and Recs perspective. So more to follow on this, but I wanted to just give you I was asked at the last meeting to get an update on it as far as get this moving. And so I acknowledge that. So this is where we are right now. If people would have other suggestions, I'll gladly like to hear from you. Thank you.
So Tom, thanks for that. Am I to understand that the state is looking for 3 different proposals? They didn't want this group?
It was unclear from the state. The state specifically did not give me a statement as far as what would be good or not. What they did say is that you don't have anything on the current books, and if you go take a look at what the state has been approving for the last few years, because they started this program back in 2000 or whatever, and so you can take a look at last year they only approved 2 programs, and both of them are like 4-mile sections, that are just one little. They're just one little thing. It's not a whole network like we put in. So I'm just trying to be consistent with what they're approving.
No, I hear you. So it's saying is that in order to get, because there's benefits to getting approval and stuff, it might almost be better to submit 3 different Greenway applications.
Yeah, right. Essentially.
Okay. All right. No, that I'm just trying to find the logic there. So
yeah, and what I was trying to do is just use the logic of extension from the linking our linkage, as we talked about in the conservation plan, was to get a linkage to from New London coming over the bridge, and then up into Ledyard, taking a look at what where they are with their Great Oak Greenway.
Okay, got it. All right, Bright.
Just to follow up on what Tom was saying, a number of years ago, when Conservation Commission was looking at the Greenway when it was first coming out, the town was, the planning department was encouraged to look at Crosstown Trail as being, Tom was talking about that greenways for some communities that have been approved are just these short sections, maybe something 4 miles long, not something quite as elaborate as what's being proposed now. But I just wanted to throw on the table that at one point, they thought that the Crosstown Trail would be a very good candidate for submission. And I don't know where it's gone. I don't know if it's still on the table. But that was a connection of a whole variety of different properties to make that possible. And I don't know if the town ever followed up, or they started to and it just never followed up on it. I'm not sure.
Tom?
What I can tell you is that the Crosstown Trail does exist already. It's marked, it's mapped, and that's where the bridge I just showed you is the last real part to make that all happen. And that's why Mark had actually put the request in, because our greenway basically goes through that area, and our green belt, excuse me, we had gone through that area, and that's why he was actually proposing to go to the state to get the money. And when they didn't get the approval for the greenway, that's where he rotated through the Trails Task Force and found the leftover funds from the school building fund to cover the cost for that. But once that bridge is in place, then the original Crosstown Trail pathway will essentially be completed. So I'll take a look at I like, that we may want to go get designation for it, but there's really no, like Lagosa one, and also the other one is I'm trying to come up with an area, because when I'm looking at these other recent designations, they have gaps in them, and they use the designation to get additional funding to go procure property, that type of stuff, rather than just designating something that already exists. But they're using the Crosstown issue and the Greenway designation to help getting funding for procurement of pathway rights, or just open space for wildlife preservation areas. But we'll take a further look at that.
All right. Is there an intermediate checkpoint before next March that, in terms of anything the commission can help with on this?
Well, the ball right now is with Mark. I gave this to him. It was just, he hasn't even had it for a week yet. So I will report at the next meeting on what, and I'll also add in this crosstown trail stuff and give him an update.
All right. Okay. And I think the only other item was trying to figure out how to get to some legal language on the unprotected parcels. So somewhere in that list, let me now think what I was going to say here. So Michelle, in that list of the 9 parcels, I don't recall any of them saying, are any of those not protected legally, or these are some other parcels? I'm just trying to remember I don't think there were any of the action items.
I don't remember legal being part of the action item, but maybe Tom is probably better to answer that. Because I think if there were legal issues, they'd either say it or they wouldn't be in there for us to, like, they'd be on hold. Is that a correct assumption, Tom?
Here, because of the status of protection, I did not put any of those into the individual stewardship plans because I didn't see that as a stewardship action. That was more from the conservation plan. We have an action already to go take a look at preservation of all the parcels across the board that don't have protection in place. That was a separate action. That's come. I did not include those into any of the stewardship plans because it's really not a stewardship action. It's a action for the Conservation Commission to be working from a legality perspective to better protect the town's own property from using it incorrectly in the future.
All right. I think in the laundry list that you had, in the laundry list you have, I think we can quickly sort through whether they are or aren't. I just didn't know off the top of my head. So I think that's still in. I think we should know that independent. I mean, I hear you, Tom, in terms of there's X properties, but if any of these 9 are unprotected, I think that's of special note.
Well, I can tell you that I'm looking at the first one on I've got the status spreadsheet up, and the first one I've got is Birch Plain. I've got silent deeds right there on 3 of the parcels.
So
same for Industrial Drive, same for Fleet Bank. So I would say a majority of them already are silent deeds. Okay, that the majority of the 9 parcels have protection issues.
All right. So having said that, that kind of adds a little more emphasis on those parcels. So Bruce, we got a town staff question here. So Tom and I have a kind of exchange. We've thrown legal language back and forth against each other, and it occurred to me that we shouldn't be doing that. We should have legal input rather than us trying to extract it, because a lot of the formats where a private property gave, donated, or sold property to the town, and it's kind of embedded in the grantor, the grantee, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, the town owns it. So the issue is not that, it's what do we have to do to ensure that town-owned property designated as open space is legally protected as open space. Can we ask the question to the town attorney on, and it can't be more than a few paragraphs of text, I would think, but is there a recommendation on what language can be used to ensure that this designated open space property is in fact legally protected and not silent?
Yeah, I think we could certainly pass it on to the town attorney, especially if you have suggested language, I mean, we could pass that along too and say, hey, what do you think about this? I mean, this is the goal. Do you have any tweaks? And he could comment on it and read it and help out that initiative. I mean, it's something we did back, I don't know, 10 years ago now. I mean, we did like, we did a comprehensive, what we did was we recorded one piece of land records that preserved the conservation easements on several of town properties. And I think Tom found that.
Sorry.
I think Tom found that during his search and all that work that he did on that. And I think Bray was around when that happened as well. So that maybe that's something else we can do. Again, you know, if you have specific properties that you identified as being vulnerable, I mean, that's an option too. But I think, yeah, both of those things we can definitely request the town attorney's opinion for.
All right. Does that need to be specific in writing from us to you, or is this meeting sufficient?
Well, I mean, if you have suggestions you want me to pass on to him, I would do it in writing. I would do it in writing either way, just so I can forward him that.
All right, Tom?
Two items. One is that what Bruce was alluding to was the 1988 referendum and the way the town handled the parcels and stuff in regard to a documentation within the deed recording, and so that there was like a blanket thing that Barbara Tarbox as the town clerk recorded, and then applied that to each of the individual deeds as they're recorded. Separately, you know, on a go forward basis, I look at this as you kind of have two things. One, if you want to have a formal easement, you know, that somebody else would be holding to preserve it as open space, we could do that. But the flip side of it, I think it'd be a lot easier is just to somewhat have a blanket amendment that would be tied to the individual deeds that says that a review of conducted in 2021 or whatever, and that this a parcel has been designated through the town plan of conservation and development, as well as a town conservation plan, open space and conservation plan, and as a result, that this parcel is to be retained as an open space category, whatever. And I think that would be the easiest thing in having, you know, kind of put that paragraph together, like Bruce mentioned, and I can work on that as I can over the next couple of weeks here. I'm going to be on a lot of travel up in Alaska, but I'll see what I can get together for you to put a straw man together that we can then turn over to Bruce. We can then take it to the town attorney to say, hey, can you do a blanket one on these designated PIN number and do it that way.
Great idea.
All right, so the action series would be one, Tom was taking a whack at a very brief covering amendment. Two, we already have the linkage of which properties and list of properties require their protection. Three is we take those together and send a formal request to the planning function to then request town attorney review, approval, and recommendations. Okay? Do I see head nods on all that? Okay. Letter to planning. It's a list. It's a recommendation.
And just to reference what I was talking to, the resolution to on the conservation restrictions, it's volume 919, page 600, if anyone wants to look it up.
Line 919, page 600. Okay.
Yeah, I just looked at which one the let me see. It's the Mortimer Wright property is tied to that. So I thought it was after 1998 or 1988,
And
But,
Mortimer Wright was bought with that. That was a 1988 bond. That's how that property was procured.
Okay.
All right,
There was a
all
question,
right.
just
Yep.
a quick follow-up to Tom, that what Barbara Tavox did was to sort of codify that the properties that were bought with the bonding issue of 1988 actually legally could be, were tied up as open space. And so they did that blanket statement and attached it to the deeds of a number of those properties. But that's sort of the mechanism that I was looking at over the, when the town acquires new open space, however it does, that it has some sort of writing in there that is similar to each one to know that it is protected.
I can tell you from reviewing the deeds, a majority of the subdivision open space that that the town's been receiving has some type of, when that deed and the turnover is being done and it specifies as for open space purposes requirements. Not all the time. And so this is where there's, I would say, on the part of, I don't know who reviews these deeds as they get processed. Like who's reviewing this Maple Glen one that's going to be coming within the next, as soon as the town approves it, that somebody's going to have to process some deeds and stuff. That mechanism, I don't know who's doing that, who's reviewing it to ensure, because that's when you ought to do it right the first time. And that's what that process is.
I can answer that. When a subdivision is approved and open space is a requirement of all subdivisions unless there's a fee in lieu, the planner who is assigned to the subdivision reviews the deeds prior to recording. So in the case of Maple Glen, Deb Jones is handling that, and we'll make sure that language is correct for that it's deeded for open space purposes, and it's protected. And she's been here since 1988, and she's done a lot of the subdivisions, so that's kind of been the process. Yeah, since we enabled that legislation within our subdivision regulations, which I think was in the 80s.
Yeah, and I would say a majority of them are. I'm not going to say 100% because I do have some that they're silent deeds, but you know, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I don't think it's worth the effort to QA this stuff because that's really what we're doing here. It's very, you know, as long as you guys have a process within your department and you're doing it, that's great.
Yeah, I was just explaining the process. Yeah.
All right, yeah, we're just trying to clean up things that didn't happen over the last 20 or 30 years. All right, that is officially the end of the agenda. And I will say, are there any new items of business any of the members would like to raise? Tom?
Just one item was that the Baker's Cove people are going to be meeting later this week. I'm not going to be attending. Karen, are you attending?
I am attending. In fact, the meeting's tomorrow at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11:30.
I just want to let you know, just because I think we're on the agenda to talk something there.
I looked at the agenda this morning. I have to go relook at it because I didn't see that.
There was something in regard to some kind of volunteer effort to clean up thing on the agenda. I saw it and embedded. I think this is one of the things that Larry had volunteered previously with the cleanup effort at the EB Birch Plain Creek here.
Oh, they may be
but
they may be thanking us again for it because they were very grateful for the volunteers.
Okay.
So it may be done.
Yeah, I just noticed that on the agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah, no, they just may be thanking us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. What wasn't now that I think about it, wasn't there a meeting with was that the All Trails meeting that was just held? And I thought I saw a fairly significant update come across. Let me see. that I thought, I know I didn't attend it because I was out of town. There's any, it was, oh, was that the Groton Town and City Bike Pedestrian Summit meeting?
That was back in June. And I talked about that at the last meeting. There wasn't anything really specific to the Conservation Commission.
All right, May 20th. Yeah, it was at the June meeting. Okay, so somehow that they finally got out the minutes of it. I think that's what happened.
Okay.
So I was going to say if there's anything in there. All right, fair enough. Again, I guess any other new business items someone wants to bring up? Going once, going twice. All right, I guess I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Does Bruce have anything?
Oh, I forgot. Town staff, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. No, I don't have anything, but I did just want to ask how this went, if there's any feedback. I saw a couple times when I was moving stuff around the table, it looked like my mic was going up and down. So I didn't know if there's any feedback. Can I improve it in here or how it was?
We can hear you well.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, very
You didn't
clear.
say too much, so we couldn't tell if you were moving.
Yeah,
the
there was
mic.
only one time where video went down and it went to Groton staff. That lasted about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, and then you pop back. So I only saw one occurrence where, and I thought maybe you were doing something. I didn't know if it was, I guess I should ask next time to see if this is a quality check, to see if that was you doing it or whether it was somehow accidental. That was it though. I mean, the rest of the time, you were always there and responded to us. So it was fine.
Okay,
But
yeah.
other folks. So
I
hybrid.
was just wondering because the microphone's right here. So I was thinking, when I start moving papers around or stuff like that, it would pick up on that and kind of ruin the quality. But it sounds like that wasn't an issue.
No, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I had.
I had one more follow-up. I had asked you early, Bruce, about, is there any rules in the town about electric bikes being utilized? Because the state did change their regulations, says on state property, class 1 and class 2 electric bikes can be utilized. I was just wondering if the town had anything like that as well.
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I did get that email. I was going to forward that to Mark Berry because I think he would know right away. And your question's more for like town trails and open spaces more so than on the roads because we have the electric bike rental. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. No, that was it. Because I know there's that's starting to be a thing.
It is.
So, I'm kind of conflicted myself because it doesn't add combustion, does have pedals. It's kind of this hybrid thing. And so it seems like should we as a conservation commission take a position on it or not? I mean, that was kind of my thought. And my first thing was to ask if the town has any restrictions, ordinance or something on those vehicles, on those bikes or enhanced bikes. Anyone have any off the cuff thoughts on that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. Oh, Tom, you always have an off the cuff thought. Yes.
Well, I guess this really to some degree goes back to the whole issue of the open space ordinance. Right now, the Parks and Rec Commission establishes the rules and regulations for the town parks, and that's the listed items in the category 2 open space areas for town parks. And so it's the open space areas that don't have any regulations to them, whether you're going to put an electric bike, a drone, or whatever, parachuting or whatever there. So it kind of goes back to, you're kind of asking a question that has a bigger question mark than just electric bikes. And what should we be doing for the open spaces? And should we be processing or pushing for the ordinance?
Oh, back to the ordinance. We wanted to avoid that, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
That would make sense actually, because I did do a quick search of the town ordinances and I didn't find much on open space. So yeah, I would agree with that. It's just not codified. So
is the thing is if it's not codified, it's permitted, or if it's not codified, it's not permitted?
We're in America.
Oh my God, that means it's permitted.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll still ask the question though, Bruce.
yeah, no, I'll try to get. I'll ask Mark. I'll try to get an answer for everyone. I wrote it down.
That's fine. All right. Okay. So I guess of course I asked for the motion and then I think that added something. I will again look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Olson.
Michelle, there's a motion seconded by Tom. Any discussions? All in favor? All right, unanimous. Thank you. Unfortunately, we wanted to meet in person and we failed in that objective. Maybe next month. Bruce, make that
Won't be
happen.
next month. No way.
Yeah.
I know.
And then, yeah, I'll keep you guys updated, and obviously, we can keep going with this hybrid format. If anyone is uncomfortable attending, we'll always make this option available for people to attend virtually too.
Are you thinking of, are there going to be bigger rooms so that it's more than three? I mean, because the problem was you could only get 3 people in the room because of the way it's structured. Is the hybrid capability can be provided in other larger rooms? It
is. We're working on the CR1, which is the room the council used to meet in, and also the CR2, the one where I don't know if anyone's ever been to any of the planning and zoning commissions, but we're working on that too. And that one's getting, that one's getting very close. So that would accommodate all of us.
So we may be able to do that and be able to do social distancing, masks, and be able to be there. All right, so we'll I'll discuss with you offline, Bruce, on how that's progressing and where our next meeting actually is.
Okay. Yeah, I only mentioned that because I don't want anyone to stress out about it. Well, we can accommodate hybrid if anyone's nervous. So.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Night.
Bye. Good night.